there's an old adage, you don't negotiate with evil. And there's no question the Khomeini regime is not only evil, they're corrupt. And as has been pointed out, what would an agreement with such a regime mean anyway? The Islamic principle of taqiyya, lying, to advance the cause of Islam, will certainly come into play. You know, with Iran, there have been thousands of Americans who have lost their lives, starting with the takeover of our embassy in Tehran in 1979. The Marine barracks blow up, our embassy blow up, and all the other kidnappings, the murder of our CIA station chief. But most importantly, never forget the role that Iran played in providing the necessary material and training support to the 9/11 hijackers, without which that attack could not have been carried out. That seems to get dismissed. And let me tell you, as Frank mentioned, and I will be brief, I promise, ever since, it hasn't mattered whether it's been a Republican or Democratic regime. Every one of them has failed to find the political courage to take the action that had to be taken. Starting with Carter when they took over our embassy. The chairman called me up. I was the director of political and military affairs for the JCS then. And he said, "What can we do?" I said, "I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take Carg Island." We could have walked in, taken it with Navy SEALs, and we would have cut Khomeini off at the knees. My plan was, you got 24 hours to turn over the embassy, or you're going to have the biggest ashtray in the Middle East. The next time came with the Marine barracks blow up. Casey called me out to Langley. I was the deputy chief of naval operations then. And he said, "If we find out who did it, would I make up the plans to take them out?" I said, "Of course." Long story short, oh, he said, "There's one stipulation. Whatever we give you, you can't turn over to the Joint Staff." He didn't want to read about it in the next edition of the Washington Post, and which I agreed to, and I never did turn it over, even though I'm down briefing the chairman. He said, "I want you to turn all that." I said, "I'm very sorry, I can't do it," and didn't do it. I knew then the Soviets were reading our communications. This is long before we knew about John Walker. I won't go in to tell you how I knew that, but I did. So I couried the plans to the carriers. We had the planes loaded. We were ready to launch. We were going to make the Sheikh Abdullah barracks look like a plowed cornfield in Iowa. We'd have wiped out the entire core group of Hezbollah. The guy that sabotaged the strike, and this is after I personally briefed him in his office, was none other than the Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger. He did it not only once, but twice. Reagan approved a combined strike with the French, and Weinberger wouldn't issue the order. I personally talked to George Shultz, Bud McFarlane on this, and they verify it. They made calls, and he refused to change his position. Who got to him? God knows. But he certainly was gotten to. The next time was in the Gulf Tanker War. We had the plans to shut Iran down. We'd been working on it for a number of months. Again, I briefed Weinberger at my headquarters at Pearl Harbor. And we could have really brought down the Khomeini regime. We had multiple opportunities to change the course of history, and we failed each one of them. Here we are today. And I got to tell you, economic sanctions to me have always been a cop-out. There's only one way to stop the Iranian nuclear program. You gotta take it out physically. Now, with this administration, that's not going to happen. As I said in a recent op-ed piece, it's up to Israel, regretfully. And we need to provide them with the necessary resources to make it as successful as possible. Of course, what's going on, and you recognize this, treasonous acts are being committed. The takedown of our military capability is unheard of. Yet we don't have the leadership in this building to stand up and do anything about it. If they had the political backbone and courage, really, impeachment proceedings would be started. And never mind the crap about falling back, but look what happened to Clinton. Clinton's was a sex and lying to a jury. This is not even in the same ballpark. This is our national security. This isn't anything we should be screwing around with. Will it happen? Regretfully, I'm not optimistic. But let me say this, we can't give up. And we have to do everything we can in our power to keep the pressure on.